This national forest in particular seems to be on a rampage, even though the public really values large and old ponderosa pine in particular out here. Yet with the 5 Butte sale, we saw a timber sale that was planned in both old-growth ponderosa pine and diverse mixed conifer forests that had old-growth sugar pine, old-growth white pine, old-growth grand fir, old-growth Douglas fir, old-growth Shasta red fir. But that means the trees that are marked orange are to save and everything else will be cut. So in other words, they are planning to cut it. And I did field check this before, and there's enormous slash piles, and they took out a large percentage of the old growth trees. They're planning to take out about 72% of the old growth altogether. They are effectively logging 2/3 of the entire Lookout Mountain experimental forest. And under the Northwest Forest Plan, they're not supposed to be logging in a late successional reserve. They artificially narrowed the purpose and need of the projects so that only this study's design would be considered part of the purpose and need. So that's a basic violation of the National Environmental Policy Act. So that should have been enough to stop the sale in itself, I think. But it didn't. So that's why we're here. We went through the entire legal process with the sale, where we used volunteers to field check all the sale units over a period of time, and then we wrote comments and submitted survey sheets and photographs of the habitat conditions in the sale units and wildlife sign we saw, like fresh pileated foraging and the tree species composition, and measured the old growth and everything. They're claiming that this sale is necessary, or this series of very lucrative old growth timber sales are necessary to decrease the risk of uncharacteristic wildfire insects and disease. And yet it's very healthy forest. It hasn't been significantly disturbed since 1845. And the definition of an old growth tree out here is over 21 inches and over 150 years old. So this is what would be called a legacy tree. It's hundreds of years old. It provides important carbon storage to help avert climate change, nutrient recycling when it falls down on the forest floor. This kind of large diameter tree is what's largely missing. Then when we couldn't negotiate with them, we took it to court, but unfortunately we lost.
Yeah, and those two like what look like mounds, those are slash piles.
The logging slash?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
This is exponentially higher fire danger than existed here before. Just piles of slash everywhere.
There is always been a lot of peace up here, but the peace was alive. And this kind of silence, it doesn't feel alive. There's no movement in it. You'd hear the wind in the trees, you'd hear things moving against themselves, you'd hear birds and squirrels. It was alive.
You can see that they had a good rate of growth. There's no problem with how these trees were growing. And one of the arguments in the environmental impact statement is a decreased rate of radial growth within the last decade or so. Well, that's totally normal for big trees. They slow down and they grow at a decreased rate. There's nothing unhealthy about that. So this is unit 41 on the map, which is marked light blue, which means they're taking it down to only 50% of the upper management zone, which means they're taking out more trees than in the other types of units. And as you can see, this doesn't look like just a commercial thinning, which is what they're claiming to do to reduce wildfire risk in insects and disease and to study increased radial growth in trees. This is pretty much a clear cut with just seed trees left. So it's very wide open, it's very sterile, they removed a lot of biodiversity, and it's not a natural looking forest. It's not natural for the site. This site is a pretty productive site and should have many more trees than that. Reducing the forest to very sterile, wide open pine plantations and removing some of the last old growth and the trees that are about to become old growth. So these are some of the trends we're seeing on the Deschutes National Forest. And if anything, they made it more wide open, hot, dry microclimate where the wind would move through very swiftly and carry a fire. And after this phase has passed and there starts to be regrowth of the shrubs and small trees, this is going to be more flammable than ever. When it had a lot of bigger, mature, and old growth trees, those are more resistant to fire. My group, the Blue Mountains Biodiversity Project, monitors 4 national forests, including the Malheur National Forest, the Umatilla, the Ochiko National Forest, and the Deschutes. It's a volunteer-based organization. How would this respond to wildfire or insects or disease? That's what this area is really valuable for, is to do that kind of non-intrusive research, looking at an intact, resilient forest and seeing how it responds on its own without management.